Ignore the zit that's building up right here. As you can probably see, I haven't been sleeping well. There is a guy, like, on my floor who starts singing in that really mediocre way that's almost good, so it makes it much more frustrating. Like, he starts singing at around 11:50 p.m., and it drives me nuts. And I can't sleep until about 1 p.m. 1 a.m. technically, 1 a.m. and not technically, it's 1 a.m. And yeah, it's been kind of fucking me up. But we're gonna get through this because that's the Korean way. Even if you have the flu, in which I do have right now, you just go and study and get everybody else sick. So you just get rid of the competition. So it's technically a good thing. Here's the thing. A lot of people seem to be really surprised by the fact that English is my second language. Everybody usually just assumes that I'm American because of the accent that well, I didn't really choose this accent, I just kind of ended up with it. So, and I have spoken some Korean here and there in some reviews to show everybody that I'm not lying. I am in fact Korean. I have been living in Korea since I was born. I've never been to any of the English-speaking countries besides Canada. And that was just for 8 weeks, and I was 12 when I went there, so it didn't really change a lot. I just got to talk in English with a lot of people. That was the only benefit that I had when it comes to enhancing my skills or whatever. And even I've been to other countries, obviously, but I've never been to the United States or the UK or Australia. So usually people are really surprised, like, how did you get to the point that you are now, even though you never lived in those countries or whatever. So I think it would be interesting to talk about how I got here, English-wise. Because here's the thing, I don't necessarily like talking about how I got here. It feels kind of egotistical, and if anything, I'm not that proud of my English skills. Or I even hate calling it skills because almost 50% of the world speaks English. I'm probably wrong in that statistic, but I'm sure a good chunk of the world speaks English. It's not like I'm speaking French or German or Hebrew or Latin or a lot of people use Chinese, so I don't know, some language that's like genuinely hard to learn. It's fucking English. It's all over the radio. It's in music, it's in movies, it's in TV shows. Most of the popular forms of art and entertainment are in English. So it's not like I'm using this rare language. And I have met Koreans who have never lived in English-speaking countries just like me, and they're way better at English than me. At English than me, so I don't usually brag about it, but I feel like it would be a nice gesture for you people to learn how I got here, and maybe some of you can use these ways that I've learned English in your own life. Maybe you're trying to learn German, or some other. Maybe you just want to end up being bilingual or trilingual, or maybe you want to end up speaking 4 languages. So here's how I got here. And by the way, I'm just gonna divide my life into certain phases to explain how I got here, because that's just how it happens. You don't really realize that you're getting better at a certain language. The change is very subtle, so it usually happens in phases and not like within very specific moments. So the first phase would start from the point where I was born up until I was 3. So here's the thing, my mother is an English teacher. She's been an English teacher throughout her whole adult life. She's been teaching Korean college kids, middle school kids, and elementary school kids. But here's the thing, both of my parents cannot speak English fluently. And that obviously includes my mother. My mother is only good at teaching kids how to solve English questions. She's not really able to speak English fluently. Like obviously she knows the basic phrases, but she can't really hold a conversation. Usually when she's trying to hire a foreigner technically in Korea, like when she's trying to hire an English speaking person, a person who actually uses English as a first language to teach some of the Korean kids, she usually needs my help to talk with those people. So when I was really young, my parents decided that I should be better than the rest of the world, which is like, obviously that's how most parents think. And so they bought me a bunch of books and a bunch of VHS tapes, and basically half of the books that I had were Korean, obviously because I live in Korea. Obviously, I need to learn how to speak Korean, and half of the books I had were in English. I hate my hair. Have I ever? I usually mention this in almost every single video that I've fucking done. Maybe it's just me being insecure, which is probably that's probably the right way to look at this. So half of the books I had were English, and obviously these are like your usual suspects: Where the Wild Things Are, In the Night Kitchen, Berenstain Bears, Goodnight Moon, and all that bullshit. So I grew up reading those books, and my parents did not let me watch any Korean shows. They did not want me to they didn't want me to obsess over Korean shows because they knew that I would only watch those shows because those are much more easier to understand than English speaking shows. So they borrowed a lot of money because we were fucking poor when I was young, and they bought me a bunch of VHS tapes, and there were like amongst those tapes were Disney movies and Sesame Street and Blue's Clues and basically every single thing that most lazy parents in America or the UK show to their kids. I had VHS tapes of Barney, and we were dirt poor and we had a lot of debt, but my parents still invested all that money just to make me speak English. And at the age of 3, eventually, and I was kind of a late bloomer, I didn't speak until I was 3. Obviously I spoke words, but never a full sentence. But when I was 3, I spoke my first sentence, and my first sentence was not in Korean, it was in English. My mother told me the exact conversation that she had with me. I just came up to her, and suddenly I asked, "Mom, what do you like?" And of course my mom was like overjoyed, like she realized that her little thing worked. Now my son's speaking in English, and she just said, "Oh, son, I love strawberries." It's just like an innocent thing to say, and this is seriously what I said to my mom, and this is just what my mom's telling me, but supposedly I said, "No, Mom, you don't like strawberries, you like coffee," and then I just ran away. So already at the age of 3, I was an asshole. I grew up being an asshole. Now we go to the second phase in which which starts from when I was 4 to when I was 6. So at that point I was kind of watching movies on a loop with those VHS tapes. I was kind of memorizing them, and I was kind of memorizing the cadences and the accents and the terms that they were using. So I was mostly I watched Monsters Inc. and The Incredibles probably about 100 times, so this accent probably comes from those 2 movies. Thank God I don't actually speak like Billy Crystal. That would be weird. That would be really weird. But the really big thing was that I went to a special English-speaking kindergarten. Now here's the thing: most of the kids at that kindergarten ended up not being able to speak English in the end. But I was already able to speak English, so I was just going there to kind of, practice my little thing that I had. And, 2 things happened there. One, I was able to use English every day, so obviously it just got better. But 2, it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that people of different races exist, because obviously it's an English-speaking kindergarten, and parents obviously want English-speaking people there. And even if you're like a Korean who speaks perfect English, they don't want that. They want the visuals. They want the blue-eyed blonde white guy teaching kids English. I'm sorry, it's true. That's just how this works. And it turns out all the teachers there were white. So Korea's kind of racist like that. But that's just what the parents wanted. And obviously, it's the business. So, it's not like I can judge them for that. I can judge the moms, though. So all the Korean moms are racist. There, I said it. So I was able to talk with all these people from, I'm assuming America. I never learned where they came from. And, I was able to practice English and actually speak in it. So I slowly got better, but from what I've heard, I still have that accent, that Asian accent that most people make fun of. But I got rid of that in my third phase, which starts from when I was 7 till I was 10. So our family was finally able to afford cable. And that opened so many doors, because the second we got cable, I discovered 3 channels. I discovered Cartoon Network, the Disney Channel, and Nickelodeon. And these 3 channels blew my fucking mind. I started watching Courage the Cowardly Dog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Kim Possible, all the shitty Disney sitcoms, including Hannah Montana. I was not one of the smarter kids who knew it was shit right away. No, I got into it. And I watched Kids Next Door and Teen Titans and the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Ed and Eddie. And this kind of led me to having a hard time to relate with other kids around me, because they didn't watch those shows, except for SpongeBob for some reason. SpongeBob, the dubbed version of SpongeBob, was a huge hit in Korea. And by the way, just for a fun fact, Patrick's name in Korean is Dungi, and that basically means that's basically Korean for fatty. So yeah, we're not that PC around here. We just call fat people fat. So this not only got me into animation. I still watch anime. I still watch cartoons. I still watch Adventure Time. I used to watch Gravity Falls, but obviously now it's over. I still watch South Park, Rick and Morty, BoJack Horseman, and all that. But most importantly, these cartoons just kind of got me into speaking and listening to English every day. And while it got me into speaking and listening to English while I was enjoying myself. Because but every kid loves cartoons, and because these were in English, it was just getting into me. And I was learning all these, all these strange cartoonish comedic timing, and I was actually a very over the top kid as a kid, because I was learning English mannerisms through cartoons. So I was basically a real life Ren and Stimpy around that age. And then we get into the fourth phase, which starts from when I was 11 till I was 13. So this is when I really got into my 3 main passions, as of now. Films, music, and reading books. Now, all 3 of those things kind of weren't separate videos, but these hobbies obviously just exposed me regularly to English. Like, most of the movies I started watching, like most of the really famous movies, are obviously all in English. Most of the most famous songs in the world are in English. Most of the most famous books in the world are in English. So it just ended up like that. However, I discovered something that kind of puts all of that into one little box. And that was YouTube. And through YouTube, I discovered movie reviewers and movie reviews. And I also discovered Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic. And watching him, obviously as a kid I loved his videos, but it made me want to write my own reviews. So I started writing a lot. And I was writing reviews up until I was 16. At that point I kind of changed into a video format thing. But so yeah, I started writing English. That was like the first time I was really trying to create a constructed argument within text. And I also tried writing books. And I did finish one, and it's completely fucking terrible, and I'm so glad that it never got published. I'm so glad that I never sent it to anybody. I still have it. It's a YA novel about this guy named Lauren, and oh god, it's so bad. It's got like flying surfboards and 8-headed dragons, and it was terrible. But at least I did something, and overall, because of this, not only am I able to speak English fluently, I'm actually kind of, I personally think, I'm kind of good at writing also. So all of this was just, all of this helped me to kind of like construct arguments and construct, very tangible ideas within English and actually put them in text forms or in speech forms like this. And then we come into what I consider my last very relevant phase, because which starts from when I was 14 to when I was 16, because after when I was 16, nothing really changed. Like, I just got way more into movies, I got way more into music, I got way more into books and writing. I started writing songs after I was 16, I started writing bits of like skits and whatever. But outside of that, nothing really changed a lot. So this is kind of technically, this fifth phase is kind of the last phase. Obviously, my interest in films, music, and books got deeper. Not much happened in that regard. Same with how I was after I was 16. But two main things happened. I discovered stand-up comedy, and that was a huge deal. Like, I feel like most people can relate to this. The first person I discovered was George Carlin, and to me, he was a shock. And I feel like that might have been the case for most people. Like, watching him deconstruct religion, society, politics, or just human mannerisms in general was just mind-blowing to me. I didn't know this was a thing. And then after that, I discovered Bill Hicks and Richard Pryor and Norm Macdonald, who I love so much. And I know this is such a fucked up. No, I discovered Louis C.K. I loved Louis C.K. Fuck it. He turned out to be kind of creepy, but you know what? He was funny. And back then, I didn't know all this shit was going to happen, so fuck it. Yeah, I watched Louis C.K. and I discovered Mitch Hedberg. Mitch Hedberg fascinated me because the way he used the English language and just the way he just basically dismantled reality with his punchlines was just amazing to me. And watching all these stand-up comedy specials and just stand-up comedy bits made me teach myself about how to use, how to use cadence to convey a certain emotion. And it taught me about comedic timing. And maybe that's why I'm slightly theatrical when I speak, because I watched all these people, and it just kind of got into me. I usually, because it's the second language, I feel like I just absorb everything that I see and make it into my own somehow. And the second big thing that happened was that I made a friend who's 20 years older than me. He's from America, and he's here to teach kids and whatever. He introduced to me a lot of different things. He introduced literature-wise, he introduced to me to Ray Bradbury. Film-wise, he introduced me to a bunch of really stupid shit. He made me watch Mallrats and Kentucky Fried Movie, and I love those two movies now. But like, I had no idea what to make of it when I first saw them. But like, music-wise, he introduced way too much stuff to me. Like the Sundays, the Cranberries, the Talking Heads, the B-52s, Massive Attack, Bjork, the Pet Shop Boys, Belly, Breeders, and the list just goes on. And most importantly, I had somebody to talk with and to really challenge my arguments with when it comes to music and all these things. He made me become maybe slightly more argumentative, which might be a bad thing, but he made me become a much more smarter person. I'm able to like make tangible arguments much better now, thanks to him, because I actually had a partner to actually have to converse ideas with. So that helped a lot. So if I actually had a person next to me to regularly really challenge ideas with, and that's very different from just having somebody to talk to. You have a person who has the same passions as you have, and you have somebody that's, quite frankly, just much more knowledgeable in those fields, and you constantly challenge yourself, and you make your arguments better, and you make your arguments more solidified, and that made me want to become a better person when it comes to speaking English, because I wanted to one day just beat his arguments to the goddamn ground. And since then, not a lot changed. I'm just a very depressed bilingual person now, but that's how my life was when it comes to English. So I feel like the main things we can get out of this is that I'm basically proof that learning an English and getting to this point takes a lot of time. It took me 20 years, or technically 16 years, because I did say that that was my last phase. Obviously, you need to communicate. That's really a really important thing. And you need to find a way to enjoy learning the language. Obviously, I had movies, cartoon shows, music, books, and all that. And I really got into all those things. So I feel like learning through just questions and text, that's just going to ruin the experience for you. And that's really the main problem with the Korean education system, because they just teach English through these hard, boring texts and all these questions. They make it into tests that makes everybody go crazy, and there's so much pressure on these questions that when Korean kids usually think of English, they relate it to this really boring idea of studying and, taking tests. So it just ruins it for them. So yeah, fuck the Korean education system. And that's how I got to speak English. I gotta go back to that cram school because fuck my life. And seeing Finn or Fine, I think it's Finn. I could be totally wrong there. I don't speak fucking French.